Hi all, thank you for attending today. My name is Felicia Salcedo and I'm the Executive Director of We Are In. We Are In is a coalition of philanthropies, business, nonprofits, and people with lived experience of homelessness that works to create more affordable homes and address homelessness across King County. In February, we joined with the local government partners that you see here today to announce Partnership for Zero, with significant financial support from our members to supercharge the street outreach, the work that is essential to helping our neighbors come inside. The initial focus of Partnership for Zero is in downtown Seattle and the Chinatown International District. This area represents the largest concentration of people experiencing homelessness in King County. Additionally, it also represents one of the largest concentrations in the nation. While this initiative is starting in Seattle, it will not end here. Partnership for Zero will expand to a second geographic community in our county, and eventually we hope that the practices developed here will be implemented county-wide. Our partnership is spurring critical change, and now we're excited to welcome a new partner, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, to further enhance our combined efforts. Now to share more on HUD's support of Partnership for Zero, I'm honored to introduce Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell.
Thank you, Felicia. We are in. I want to, of course, say a few things about welcoming all of you to our city's Emergency Operations Center, which now we will utilize for our housing and homeless strategies, and we're very excited about this. Let me say first a few thank yous. I'd like to thank, of course, Margaret Salazar from the HUD Region 10 Director for joining us and lending their expertise and resources to make this a success. You'll hear from Marc Dones, and of course we want to thank Marc and their team at the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. So we try not just to thank Marc, but we realize Marc has a great team that are helping us do this work. You'll hear from, of course, King County members, but we want to thank King County Executive Constantine for his leadership and Shannon Braddock for her leadership, and the Lived Experience Coalition members. That gives us a centered approach on what we're trying to do in terms of our strategy. And of course, the Seattle's Office of Emergency Management Director, Curry Maher, and their team for, again, lending their facility and their expertise in doing this work. So we're here today to try to describe a level of partnership combined with our sense of urgency, our sense of using an emergency-like approach to this housing and homelessness crisis. We believe that's what's going to be necessary to get people off the streets, indoors, and on the path to recovery. That's what this is all about. When we stood united to announce our Partnership for Zero at the beginning of this year, what excited me most was the shared recognition and indeed the responsibility of a simple fact. And the simple fact in Seattle and in the county, the status quo is just not acceptable, completely unacceptable. We know that this crisis cannot be solved alone. We've said this repeatedly. We're grateful for the support of our federal and local government partners, our philanthropic communities, our business communities, our nonprofit communities, and our neighbors who are clearly aligned on the shared mission to house people, making a very simple concept solid in our foundation, and that is no one should have to live homeless or outdoors. Now, hosting the Housing Command Center at the city's Emergency Operations Center means enhanced coordination of an on-the-ground effort and situational monitoring as we continue to build coalitions and marshal our resources to drive sustainable change. We've said all along that there are no quick fixes, and so we're always looking at sustainability and how we address this issue. And this kind of collaborative, innovative work that we believed in clearly is aligned with our Regional Homelessness Partnership, and we believe this charts a clear path moving forward. When I sort of jokingly said to Felicia, we are all in, that means our resources, our facilities, and any expertise we can solicit, and in this case, gain by doing this kind of work. You saw in our proposed budget a few weeks ago that I proposed increasing KCRHA's budget by 13%, which is nearly $90 million. That shows our commitment here to using data, using investment, using dollars using evidence-based solutions to support housing, consistent with our Housing First policies. The actions we're taking today are clearly consistent with this approach. So throughout at least this year and continuing in the very near future, we are committed to transparency. That's why, again, we shared a dashboard, shared the data, try to share as much information as possible with those who want to look at what we're dealing with here in this city, in this county, in the state, and indeed in this country. But from a granular perspective, what's happening right here on the streets of Seattle. We remain committed to this work. We're very proud of the partnerships we are developing. This work is sustainable when you have the right attitude, and that is an attitude of you've heard me say before, an attitude of empathy, compassion, love, realizing that we're not questioning each other's motives. We're just trying to get to that finish line, and that finish line is going to be when we house people so desperately need the housing. So with that, I'm going to introduce a better speaker than me, some would argue. King County Deputy Executive April Putney. She actually paid me to say that. I want my money. And she's going to talk more about our collaboration. April?
Thank you, Mayor Harrell. You were definitely not supposed to say the last part out loud. Good morning, everyone. As the mayor said, my name is April Putney, and I'm the Deputy Executive for King County. I stand here today on behalf of King County Executive Dow Constantine. I've been working under his leadership to bring partners together to address the crisis of homelessness for a number of years now. And looking back, it's really clear that the moments where we've been able to affect the most change have been the ones where we are joined together to break down silos and act with urgency. And I'm really excited that today is another one of those moments. Before we continue to move forward, I want to just remind us of all of the work we've taken together to get to the place that we are today. Would not have happened without the hard work to catalyze the creation of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, bringing hundreds of new permanent supportive housing units online, limiting crowded shelters during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and mapping a cohesive plan to take on this issue as a region, not just as a city. Moving forward with this new command center means a great deal to leaders like my boss and to the hardworking public servants and human service providers who make progress every single day. I would like to thank Mayor Harrell, Marc, Marvin Futrell, and the Lived Experience Coalition, our federal partners at HUD, and our philanthropic partners who have funded the Partnership for Zero strategy and working with us all to make this announcement possible today. King County remains steadfast in our commitment to become a region that builds innovative and systemic solutions to tough challenges. We look forward to our ongoing partnership with everyone here today and many others who aren't here yet as we continue to tackle this crisis and help people gain ongoing health and stability. And now I'm pleased to introduce Marvin Futrell with the Lived Experience Coalition.
Thank you. That was quick.
Everyone needs a hand when they come up.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Positive reinforcement here.
Good morning. My name is Maria Lynn Arns, and I am a member of the Washington State Lived Experience Coalition. So I'm going to share a little bit of the history, and I'm humbled and grateful to be able to share that. We, the Washington State Lived Experience Coalition, stand on the backs and the shoulders of people who came before us. Michelle Kitchen, who's no longer with us, Brother Marvin Brownweasel, who also is no longer with us, Share Wheel, KCRHA, the Village of Hope, and the People's Institute we're in partnership with, and they are helping us to help grow and change. So I want to say that the founders, Dr. Lamont Green, Chris Lopez, Donna Andrews, Keisha Brandon, and so many more who could be here but aren't here, I'm here, are excited to be in partnership with everyone. Our desire, our hope, everything that we do is to ensure that people have equitable housing, everyone, not just those that are in our face, but those that we don't know. So thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Marvin Futrell. I serve as one of the co-directors of the Housing Command Center. I sit in the funder seat for We Are In and the Washington State Lived Experience Coalition. as I do in most cases, I'd like to start with land acknowledgement. We stand on the land of the first peoples of Seattle. The Duwamish tribe were one of the first displaced peoples in this area, and I always want to recognize that as we house everyone, no one will be missed. The Washington State lived experience has truly been engaged in the crafting design of how we're moving forward. I'd like to thank the KCRHA, City of Seattle, King County, for they are truly liberated gatekeepers. They have opened up the spaces that allowed lived experience, the voices of the people closest to the problem or living the issue, to have real decision-making capabilities, be part of the design of our response system, the crafting of this housing command center, and moving forward, the implementation and evaluation of. That's the work of at least 24 folks that from the Washington State Lived Experience Coalition. Some have titles, some do not. What I find most interesting is our ability to move away from whose job title it is to what is the work that wants to be done. So the Housing Command Center is focusing on housing first. We're going to house people, and we're doing it around one table that everyone is welcome to, and everyone is engaged in how this comes to pass. I don't know how to actually say it. The reason why, for me, has always been simple. One of the organizations that I've known for over 24 years, Wheels Women in Black, stand for those of our community that die outside to violence or natural causes. They are holding a vigil today for 34 people found dead in September. This year's total already hits 194 souls in our community. I want to ask that everyone join us in this effort. Housing saves lives. That's all I have.
Thank you, Marc.
Thanks.
Now we hear from Marc Dones.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you. I am really happy to be here today to talk about the progress that we've made. I want to start with some thank yous, as everyone has. But I want to be really clear that those thank yous to Mayor Harrell, to the Lived Experience Coalition, to our King County colleagues, to our HUD colleagues, those thank yous are not just like, oh, it's good to do thank yous at the beginning of a speech, right? Those thank yous are indicative of the fact that the authority represents, as Marvin said, one table, although that phrase is a little triggering for some of us. It represents a place where the community has come together to say collectively, we are going to end homelessness, right? And so the authority's leadership is not autocratic, it is leadership in partnership. And so these thank yous are not trite, they are real thank yous, right? Like, we have done something together that is fundamentally different. We will continue doing those things together that are fundamentally different, but the first thing we do different is doing things together. So I'm really, really happy to say that we're here today in this spirit of partnership to have this conversation. I will also say the thing that I always say, right, which is there's no good press conference about homelessness until everybody is housed. And today is still not that day. But the thing that we have to celebrate is this is real progress, right? And I know that many of you have been through the progress rodeo before, right? Of here come the officials who announce the good thing. This is real progress. And I say that as the person who came here in 2018 to audit why there was no progress. Some of what you are seeing today, this blow up, for example, of our what's called the executive dashboard for the downtown BNL. This was not possible before. It was not possible for me. I reran it literally like 5 minutes before I walked over here to get like the latest numbers. It was not possible to go in and say, who is experiencing what? How many people? What characteristics? Where are they? And what is our plan for them, right? Right before I walked over here, I met with some members of our system advocates team, right? We have over 25 system advocates in the field right now doing the work of connecting with folks. And the conversation we had in my office before I walked over was, you're doing incredible work. How can we make it easier for you? What are the barriers you are currently experiencing in housing people that are, frankly, absurd, that we as a community have collectively come together and said must no longer be barriers? And so, right, like we're having conversations about, like, this is banal, but like documentation requirements that are not requirements for any of you to move into housing, right? Things that we require of our most vulnerable that we do not require of anyone else, that we collectively have the capacity to say that should not be in the way, right? That should not be a reason why someone sleeps outside again tonight. I want to also be really clear that this is not something that just the government can do alone, right? So I'm really grateful to Felicia, Salcedo, and our We Are In partners, both for the monetary contribution, but also, frankly, for helping to champion, again, the creation of the space, right, where we can all collectively have the right conversation. I also want to lift up our nonprofit partners, Just Care, PDA, Reach, Urban League. I'm sure I'm forgetting people, so if you see this later and I forgot you, I didn't forget you. But, right, like this is not just, you know, sort of the, again, the work of government. This is the work of the community. I want to just briefly talk a little bit about this data. I think data is really important. I share the mayor's commitment to transparency and to dashboards that folks can understand. So as of today, we have engaged over 650 people. The number I have from earlier this morning is 665. We have done that by, you know, again, deploying our system advocate team. They have done incredible work. Really incredible work. They have worked swing shifts into the night, early morning, to ensure that we are connecting with every single person who is unsheltered in our downtown core and CID areas. We have, you know, seen again the startling disproportionality in who experiences homelessness. It should not be missed that roughly 260, almost 270 people are white, but 209 people are black. That is not in line with what the general population of this county is, right? Which is only 6% black. So we have to continue to foreground that when we solve homelessness for our folks of color, right? In particular, our Black and Native American communities, that is the path to solving homelessness for everyone. I also want to lift up that homelessness is a housing problem, right? And so connecting with people, building relationships is the infrastructure to help get folks inside, but the thing that you need to get people inside is housing, right? And so to that end, we have identified as part of this effort over 300 units of available housing that are ready for folks to move in today. We will continue to push on that, right, so that when we are done, we will have close to 1,000 units of available housing so that we have buffer, right, so that if other folks appear downtown, and part of this project is based on the fact that downtown has structural factors that will always dump, frankly, people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness into the core with no recourse. We have to end that at some point. But until we do, we need to be prepared to meet them when they get here and get them rehoused. The alternative is not acceptable. And so to that end, we have also diversified how we think about housing. So the housing that I'm talking about is not just PSH. It is not just, you know, sort of low-income housing. It is all types of housing, recognizing that many of the folks who are experiencing homelessness, right, can participate in market rate housing if they have shallow subsidy, if they have bridge, right? We understand that through decades of rapid rehousing work in various forms at this point. And so we are committed as an agency to not playing in the market like the market isn't real, but in fact understanding that market and using the weight that we have, the fact that our partners at HUD basically actually underwrite this housing market. That's how much money HUD puts into this jurisdiction. And as a result, we have a responsibility on behalf of our unhoused neighbors to act like that's true instead of trying to wiggle around the edges. So the conversations we're having with landlords have become fundamentally different. Can I rent this whole floor? I don't need a unit from you. I need this floor. I need 2 floors. I need to talk about everything you've got that I can marshal towards ending homelessness. We will be beginning with resolving about 5 major encampments across the downtown core and CID. And I want to just sort of end with talking a little bit about how, we have to remain centered in our values. And I want to, pick up on a thread that Marvin had, which is that when this project was initially being conceived, I remember having a lot of rapid conversations with funders, with Felicia, and we were talking then about this concept, right, of what's called a sort of joint emergency operation, which is whenever an emergency strikes multiple jurisdictions, you have to bring the jurisdictions into one operation to execute on the shared tasks. And I remember saying then that we need to understand that the jurisdiction that we have never understood as a jurisdiction are the people who are experiencing homelessness, right? They are a part of this in a way that requires decisional power that we had failed to structurally understand in the past. And so the creation of Marvin's seat, right, the creation of that lived experience seat was not a tokenistic enterprise. And when Marvin says he makes decisions about the resources that we deploy, like Marvin's decisions are separate and apart from mine and often overrule mine. Like that is what we are talking about because Marvin represents a jurisdictional stakeholder here, right? And until we make that the model nationally, frankly, with how we approach ending homelessness, until we understand that only those proximate can actually understand what is necessary to end the problem, we will be stuck here, but King County won't be. Thank you. I think now it's questions.
All right, let's open it up to questions. Erica?
When you say that 665 people have been engaged with, since when was that? And then what does engagement look like?
Sure. So the start date for engagement was August 15th. So we've had about a month and a half. And engagement follows a sort of, the model is sort of progressive engagement, right? So we start with just like, hey, what's up? Who are you? Can we talk, right? And then we start with building relationship. And the relationship that we focus on is very, it's modeled off best practice and motivational interviewing. So the relationship we build is like not just like, hey, can we hang out? Because that's not our job. Our job is to house you, right? And so the relationship we are focused on and the scripts that our system advocates use to sort of walk through things are very like, what do you need, right? Like, how can I help you get those needs met? And some of those needs are immediate, right? Like, can I make sure that you get food today? Can I make sure that you get socks? What can I help you with right now? And then also, pretty rapidly, folks fill out with either independently or with the help of their advocate what we call a housing needs or housing choice form, right? Which walks through not just, right, like, sort of the basics. What do you need? Is it accessible? Do you need support services, et cetera? But also, we believe that choice has been one of the missing things from the system, right? We have been a deeply paternalistic system, a system that says this has to work for you or else, right? And so what we have built into how we talk to people is, what do you want? Right? Like, where do you want to live, right? And people can say, I really want to live in Central District. I really want to live on the East Side. Here are the things that are going to make sense for me. I want to be close to my family. I don't want to be close to my family, right? And once we have that information, it immediately goes into a cycle of identifying units that align with that person's choices. We have a commitment, thanks to our lived experience colleagues, to offering people 3 choices. minimum, right? Where we're like, we're not going to just say, oh, here's the thing that fits your criteria. When I was looking to rent, that's not what I did, right? I got to like shop around, right? So we have a commitment of saying you deserve that same right. You deserve to select the thing that is best for you truly. So we show people at least 3 apartments, and from there they choose, and then we activate, once they've made a choice, moving support. So we fully furnish the apartments in partnership with Court, and then we offer, actual move-in support in terms of like, movement of valuables and belongings, et cetera, so that when people move into a unit, it is theirs, it is ready, it is good to go.
Erica Barnett and then Marc Sells.
Yeah, can you talk about, we're here at the command center, can you talk about how having HUD here and having this command center approach has ended up, breaking down barriers or being different? What you're describing sounds a lot like Partnership for Zero. I'm wondering if you can bring in, what effect has the command center had?
So, David Canavan, who's in the back, who's our HUD TA person, may also want to speak to this, or Margaret could. But I will say my experience has been 2 things. One, the HUD disaster TA team is currently deployed to Hurricane Ian. It's a different breed of team. And so having them here is a huge indicator of HUD support of our region's success, and the fact that like we have David physically here when Hurricane Ian is happening, right, is also an indicator of that support. The way that we have been able to, for lack of a better term, like burn down process and be like, what are we trying to do, has been incredible. And to the point where, like, again, with the team this morning, we were talking about, like, okay, how do we not need any of the things that we're used to needing? And if we just had this piece of paper with someone's housing preferences on it, how could we have them housed in 12 hours, right? And that's the other component that I think that HUD has really brought, is a discipline around urgency and a process that makes that urgency work, right? So rather than, oh, it's very urgent, and then we go into like King County Swirl Town, instead, right, what we have is decades of disaster response process being brought to us as the model that then allows us to, rather than say, okay, who's going to do what and what are we going to do, right? Like, it is, these are your roles, this is your job, come back in 24 hours and tell me that it's done, or tell me that you need me to help dissolve this barrier so that it'll be done the day after that. The other thing that I would say is that from a, silos perspective, when we meet in the, room behind this door, right, everyone is there. And that includes, mayor's team leadership from the Unified Care team, county leadership, RHA leadership, provider leadership, and we're making real-time decisions about deployment and resources together that influence in turn how the authority does things like literally we have redeployed millions of dollars, right, in alignment with decisions that have happened in that room as a collective, instead of in these, well, I'm doing my thing over here and you're doing your thing over there, and I hope that it will work together.
So just a quick follow-up. If HUD is leaving in a few weeks, is that right? Is this
No.
sort of, oh, they're not?
No.
So how long are they going to be here? And is this set up to continue after they leave?
So the initial commitment was, and the things that we have executed, barring any sort of continued ongoing other kinds of climate catastrophes, is hopefully we will have their support at least essentially through the end of the year. And there is, optionality, as with all things, to say, we need more help. And to the mayor's point about sustainability, I think our commitment as leaders is to get this in the shape that when HUD backs out, it is because we're good to go, right? And we no longer need that support of help us troubleshoot this process or this thing.
Margaret, did you want to
Yeah, I might just add, in addition to everything that Marc said, so my name is Margaret Salazar, and I'm HUD Northwest Regional Administrator. I just want to add a couple of quick things. So we are thrilled to support this effort, and really that focus of providing the technical assistance to train up this team to be able to carry this work forward indefinitely, to use this laser-focused disaster response type model with a true sense of emergency and urgency and that collaboration of folks in the room. That's what we're trying to sort of prove up here and be able to train up this team to take it and carry it forward. And I would also just note that in addition to lending our full support to the efforts here in King County, we are watching this throughout the Pacific Northwest and throughout the nation to see what we can learn from this model and hopefully take it and really Seattle and King County showing the way to jurisdictions around the nation. Thanks.
I have a two-part, multi-pronged question, so please bear with me. First of all,
Why are people named Marc so annoying, Marc?
so briefly touch on what are some of these barriers that you and I don't have to do that the homeless community does. Secondly, how many people will work here? Will it be 24/7, and when did the space open? And the third part of the question is, 25 systems advocates, is that completely staffed up, and if not, when and how many?
Okay, I'm gonna need some help. Let's start with the first thing. So what barriers might someone experiencing homelessness face that we don't have, right? When I rented my house, I did not send anyone my social security card. Just to start, right? Like, I was under no obligation to be like, here is basic documentation proving I exist, right? What we have built into our housing system for folks experiencing homelessness is this incredibly aggressive, sort of a set of mechanisms that are all based on the idea that people who are poor are out to commit fraud at every turn, right? And people aren't going to tell us who they are and be telling the truth, right? And so the number of times that we ask someone to prove who they are is way more than you have to do, which is like, as I recall, when I rented my house, I sent a pay stub and moved on with my day, right? The other things that we often put folks through are these incredibly aggressive background and sort of screeners, right? Which again, right, like the most any of us will go through, the most is a credit check, right? When we are housing folks who've experienced homelessness, for some reason, we claw open everything about them, right? And demand that it be relatively pristine in order to access a basic human right. I think another good example, and this one is less in the realm of something that we don't have to do, but it is absurd given the circumstances, is like I have had to tell people an income requirement is absurd when the government is gonna pay the rent. Like what? Like that's a bizarre like you are welcome to check the mayor's proposed budget for whether or not we will be able to pay you, right? Those kinds of things that we put in the way of people experiencing homelessness are either bizarre, well beyond what any of us have to do, or out of alignment with the problem we're trying to collectively solve. What was the next one?
Marvin, did you want to add anything?
Well, thanks, Marc. That's an interesting question because it always leans into what I bring to the table, what is usually unseen or unknown by our house community. The biggest challenge to being homeless is time. Understanding how systems that work 9 to 5 are trying to address a problem that happens for the individual 24 hours a day. It gets beyond the basic system requirements and really comes down to how we live. When the challenge is whether I eat today or I go file for an apartment, it is a bad choice for someone to have to make, and the system shouldn't make them make those kind of choices. Classic example is, where are the homeless folk, our communities? We went out for a month from 8 till 4 in the afternoon. and we touched a lot of folks. We changed those hours, but 4 hours on each end, and we doubled the number. We need we have to constantly answer questions like that. What are our unhoused neighbors actually experiencing? Not what we're shown, because that's the visible tip of an iceberg, where thousands of folks that aren't visible are still suffering homelessness. And how do they connect to a system that only works for the most vulnerable? The system should work for the continuum of people experiencing homelessness. And that's the conversation that is very rarely had in public. And so thank you for your question. If I can add more, please reach out.
Yeah, I'm Jeremy with Como. How does this new disaster response model address individuals who may have already turned down housing resources and the issue of encampments? There's a cleanup today on the Green River encampment. Will this do anything to help those folks who have shown a tendency to go back to encampments after they're moved?
I think Marvin should speak to this as well, but I want to take this apart. First thing, and I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it until we all say it, the majority of people turn down things that don't work for them. And I just need to be really clear about that, right? Like, and the idea that you can sort of toss anything at anybody and it should work is aberrant to me. It is particularly out of step with the fact that it is 2022, and if I want, I can get bespoke anything, right? And so the idea that people who are experiencing homelessness or people who are poor broadly should just accept whatever we sort of put in front of them, it doesn't make sense. And so until we align with the fact that people make choices, they have a right to make those choices. This is until it is not America, and that's the thing that we enshrine above everything else. We should not be surprised when offering people substandard or cruel responses is met with indifference or decline, right? The second thing I would say is that what I have experienced since taking on this role, so over the course of the summer, for example, we ran 3 rather large encampment resolutions. Over 100 people came inside. They're still inside. The largest of which was the CID encampment resolution at 10th and Dearborn, over 70 people, right? And out of that group, we had 1 person actually decline the things that we offered, right? So that's the actual rate of decline, 0.001%. It is not this sort of, I think, fictitious, a lot of people decline services. When we offer housing solutions, people take those up at a 99.99% rate, right? And so what we will do as the authority in partnership with everyone up here is make that the first offer instead of all the other stuff we have historically put ahead of that. And that is what people have said no to. Do you want to move into a congregate shelter where you don't have room for your stuff, where we can't take your pets, where it is gender segregated so you cannot be a couple? Those are the things that people have said, this does not work for me, and so I cannot activate this path. And we as a community have a responsibility to be clear that that is the history we are coming from and what we are stepping out of. And the last thing that I would say is that as we scale this approach, as Felicia mentioned, right? So right now we are focused on downtown and CID because this is the largest concentration of unsheltered homelessness in the county, full stop, right? But as we prove efficacy here, we will take this to scale, partnering with all 39 cities and continuing to partner with our friends and colleagues at King County so that all of the encampments and the folks who are not in encampments but are just experiencing unsheltered homelessness can benefit from this model and this approach.
Well, I just want, one of the other things is getting context of that question. It has always been perceived that folks return after removal or takes place. What is often not understood is that were we here today or not, they're 8,000 folks living together in community, building the survival skills necessary to stay alive. Once you develop a survival mechanism that's working for you, to lose it is to lose everything that keeps us alive. Thus, people choose to stay in community, in spaces where their connections are best servicing for the people experiencing homelessness. I'm just going to tie back into Marc. Now when we're actually offering housing, well, we still keep in mind that we're asking them to make a choice that housing that works best for them based on what their needs are, not what we say their needs are. And that's a transition, that's a turn. I often say that it's not uncaring that at work here. It's a lack of understanding what our neighbor is experiencing. And I will keep saying neighbor, I will keep saying community, because that's what it is when we walk outside this door each and every day. Thanks.
Just a couple tiny things. Can we say the Housing Command Center is officially open as, is it officially open?
Yeah, it's very open. It's extremely open.
Did it open last month when HUD arrived? When can we say this is like off the ground?
I would say, so, what is it? It's October 12th. I would say that as of like September 15, we were like doing work, right? You know, a lot of the initial work to Erica's question, a lot of the initial work was our HUD colleagues very graciously saying, why do you do it that way? Like, so there was a solid like 2.5 weeks that was just like, okay, this seems real complicated. And like, is that what you meant to do? Or did you think you wanted to do something else, right? And then when we switched over into fully operant, which was last week, and like we were like, okay, so like all process architecture is complete, the teams are in place, we are ready to roll. We generated a housing match in under 24 hours.
That was my next question, is has it housed anybody yet?
So we have generated a number of matches that we are in the process of within this week, right, getting people into the match.
Okay, for all permanent housing, right?
Yeah, yeah. There is no, I mean, like, there is no, hey, you can be here for 90 days. Like, that doesn't actually solve a problem.
So how many people work here, and can we go look at it?
That is a question that I am not authorized to answer. I cannot give you that permission. That is the mayor and Curry. Like, those are the only two people who can give you permission to enter this building. So I will defer to them in terms of what that process looks like. We do maintain a sign-up opportunity for members of the public. I think we have 4 seats weekly.
We will open it up to the public, sign up online, 4 people weekly. We are following EOC protocols. This is a secure building, but I will get you that link.
And then one other thing, going back to your question, so the calendar invite for this meeting is roughly 30 people. And the you asked earlier about the system advocate team. No, that is not fully staffed. Forgot to answer that. Curry? Oh, for the Housing Command Center. So it is not, I want to sort of take the idea of like working at the center is not a thing. It is a question of like how many people from across all of the jurisdictions and agencies, right, are detailed to do this thing every day. And that is that, you know, 30-ish person number. And then I would say, right, then you have additional staff, right, through the system advocate teams that are outside that don't necessarily come to this meeting. Only the leadership folks do. And then also our partners, again, at our nonprofit provider friends, right? So all told, like, if I was just ballparking, I would say this is easily a 120-person operation across all of those different things, people, touch points, et cetera.
All right, I think we're going to...
Thanks, everyone.
It's a partnership inside.